By the time I was 18 months old, the next attack came through a screen instead of a crib. My mother found the post at breakfast. She read one paragraph, then another, and her fingers went cold around the phone.
This is insane.
My father took the device from her and stood while he read the rest. I watched his face flatten line by line. No shock. No confusion. Recognition of warfare. The anonymous post framed Eleanor as an abandoned old woman and Adrian as a punished truth-teller. It painted my mother as cold, ambitious. It asked whether one spoiled little Ercegles was worth tearing a great house apart. There were photos too. Eleanor crying, just enough to imply private pain and public guilt at once. By noon was everywhere. By evening, strangers were repeating it like they had lived in our wall. My father was already in motion.
Legal team in 20 minutes. Cyber forensic 2.
Can they do this?
Yes.
Because it worked. By the time evening settled over the estate, Sterling Group stock had taken the hit too. My father stood in his study, watching the line dip.
They're not trying to get to Evelyn this time.
And finally said the truth out loud.
What are they trying to do?
He kept his eyes on the screen.
Make the family itself unstable.
If they couldn't steal me, they would make me expensive. And that meant the next move had to come from somewhere they weren't expecting. My mother sat on the nursery floor beside me. They're saying I drove his mother out. I looked up at her, then pointed toward the muted television where rolling coverage of the scandal kept replaying.
What?
I pointed again, then at her phone, then at myself. She still didn't understand, so I did it harder. TV, phoned, me. Then I shook my head and pointed to her phone again. Claire stared at me while the thought began to form.
Not them?
I tapped my chest lightly, then pointed to her.
Us?
I smiled. That was enough. Later that night, she carried the idea into the hallway and said it plainly to my father.
What if we stop responding like executives and start responding like a family?
He looked at her like she had gone temporarily insane.
What exactly would we
The
show?
truth.
That became the strategy. Just small videos from inside the house, ordinary enough to feel real, before anyone could call them crafted. The first clip went up after midnight. No surname, no defense. Just me and Richard's study, crawling towards a leather-bound financial report while my grandfather sighed and came around the desk to rescue it from me. In the background, my father said,
Dad, that's confidential.
Richard answered without missing a beat.
Then your daughter shouldn't have found it so quickly.
By breakfast, the video had crossed millions of views. And for the first time since the smear started, doubt had entered the lie. I started cracking when millions of strangers my father kneel on the study floor to rescue one financial report from me and decided cold usually laugh like that. The anonymous family clips faster than outrage had expected, not because they were polished, because they felt lived in. The smear and doubt is poison to a story people only love when they feel morally certain. My mother kept posting small fragments. Me refusing to say dada, my father losing that battle on camera. My grandfather pretending not to enjoy pushing my stroller, flour on Claire's cheek in the kitchen. Piano keys. Laughter. The house in motion. Meanwhile, the legal and forensic teams kept moving behind the scenes. One evening, my father took a call by the window and said sharply,
Say that
My
again.
mother looked up immediately. When he ended the call, his expression had shifted from strain to confirmation.
Who?
The computer used to publish the original post was in Caleb York's office,
Of course it was. Then came the second blade.
and we found related transfers. Adrian was moving money through one of York's shell entities.
My mother closed her eyes for one beat, then opened them again.
What now?
My father's answer came clean and hard.
Now we stop being nice.
The anonymous videos kept going up, the legal letters started going out, and somewhere beyond the nursery who had tried to turn was left figuring. 10 years old, I raised my hand in a room full of older students and business judges, and then I dismantled an acquisition strategy in front of all of them. They had expected a polite child question. Commodity lead exposure, laborious spin and staves, and knob retention. When there was everyone in the room, they had failed to feel expensive. My father sat 3 rows back and did not move, while the older students stood at the front, trying to decide whether to argue with a 10-year-old or admit she was right. The older students stood at the front trying to decide whether to argue with a 10-year-old or admit she was right. One judge looked from me to Nathan and asked the question everyone in the room was suddenly thinking.
How old is she?
Nathan answered without expression.
10. That feels unlikely.
That story traveled exactly the way stories like that always do in private circles. At dinners, older men tested me with questions they meant as amusements. Society women smiled and asked what schools I liked best. I answered too seriously for all of them. Richard enjoyed every minute.
She sees the board only see the piece they're holding.
He stopped speaking about me as if I were only a future possibility. He was already naming me like an oncoming fact. One evening when I was 11, my father found me in the library with a quarterly summary open beside a notebook full of margin notes. He read in silence for nearly a minute.
Did you do a sensitivity breakdown on one of my division heads?
I met his eyes across the table.
Yes.
Do you want to tell me why?
For the first time, he wasn't humoring me. He was asking for analysis. 12, I walked into my father's office with a folder in my hand and told him I knew who was trying to corner one of Sterling Group's critical suppliers. He was standing over a project board with 2 division heads when I asked for 10 minutes. They gave me the same indulge half smiles adults always give powerful children they assume are decorative. My father saw the folder and said,
Okay, message received. Out.
They left. I laid the file on his desk.
The person trying to tighten the line on Rosebauk East is Caleb York.
He flipped through the first pages, stopped, went back, and sat down too quickly for a man like him.
How did you get from Mason Industrial Holdings to York Infrastructure Services?
Registered overlap on 2 dormant entities, then financing carried through a transport shell with a duplicated legal contact.
He kept reading. I had spent 3 nights tracing the structure. Public records, shell register stations, but greed had left patterns all over the paperwork. When my father reached the last page, he closed the file slowly.
Are you sure?
Sure enough.
His mouth twitched at that. He knew exactly whose phrase I had borrowed. Then he stood, came around the desk, and put both hands lightly on my shoulders.
Well done.
No irony, no distance.
He came for us through the company because he couldn't come for me anymore.
My father's face sharpened.
Yes.
That was the moment the line changed. Once, the family had protected me. Now, for the first time, I had protected it back. 18th birthday, my grandfather stood in the top-floor ballroom of Sterling Tower, opened a velvet box, and held out the Sterling signet ring in front of every witness who mattered. This was not jewelry.
From this day forward, Evelyn Sterling becomes the largest individual shareholder in Sterling Group.
No one applauded yet. They were too busy understanding the line. It was succession made visible. Snow pressed against the windows outside while the ballroom shimmered with light and money. My mother was already crying. My father pretended to find that embarrassing and failed. Richard looked older than he once had, but no less central. He held my gaze while he spoke.
You were born into this name. You grew into it. Now you carry it.
I took the ring with both hands. In my first life, I had wanted entry, recognition, proof. In this life, I held all 3 at once. Later, in the middle of the celebration, a hotel attendant approached.
Miss Sterling, there's someone downstairs asking to see you. She says she has a business proposal.
I went down with security and found Lila Bennett waiting in the snow with a presentation folder pressed to her chest. She held it out. I'm not here because I think you owe me. I'm here because I think this should exist. Inside was a startup plan for biometric newborn identity protection. I read enough to know the core idea was strong. Then I signed the investment authorization on the spot and handed it back. You didn't even ask follow-up questions? Alvinus, though structure needs work and your expansion model is too optimistic, but the core idea is sound.
Why would you do this?
I looked past her at the snow, then back toward the gold light of my family celebration above us.
This isn't mercy. Keep the name.
I turned and walked back inside. This was my life, my inheritance, my future, and this time no one had stolen any of it.